We're, we're thrilled to see you all here. My name is Barbara Zucker-Pinchoff, and the reason I have the honor of starting this event is because my husband, Barry Pinchoff, and I endowed the commission of this work that we'll be discussing this evening. I've been asked to explain how we came to do this. I was coming up on a big birthday. I guess they all just keep getting bigger, but anyway, it was a big birthday, and it happened to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the New Amsterdam Singers. So when my husband approached me with offers of various extravagant gifts, I thought about it and I told him what I'd really like would be to commission a new work for the New Amsterdam Singers, and he was delighted. What you need to know is that I've sung with the New Amsterdam Singers for 37 years, and that Barry has been a devoted groupie throughout. We next had to pick a composer in consultation with Clara. We easily settled on Robert Paterson. It was not difficult. We had sung his work before and we loved it. What we didn't know when we picked him is that in addition to being an amazing composer, he's also a really delightful human being. He has composed over 100 works for various orchestras, opera companies, choirs, and chamber ensembles. But rather than try to list all of his accomplishments, I will refer you to his beautiful website, which is robertpaterson.com. The next task was to pick a subject for the work. I was stymied because I'm not a real devotee of poetry. So I consulted Nate Mickelson. Nate is another longtime member of NAS, and he teaches poetry. He has on occasion given us wonderful talks about the poetry we've been singing and has been a great help in understanding and deepening our appreciation for the words that we sing. So he kind of broke it down for me, and he said, when it comes to poetry, you got death, and I thought, You got love, and I thought, meh. And he said, you got nature, and I said, ding, 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 that's it, nature, that's where we're going. I inherited from my mother a passion for nature, and my husband and I now live full-time in Sharon, Connecticut, where we live with a great, big, beautiful chunk of nature. And when I thought about that, I thought, kestrels. Why kestrels? Kestrels are birds, and they are one of the smallest species of raptors, and they are the only ones that will live in man-made nest boxes. So we've had a nest box on our property for years. And over 3 of the past 4 years, we've had the joy of watching them raise broods of babies in that nest box through a telescope that's set up on our deck. Here's another picture of a kestrel. And we also have had the pleasure of helping to band them when they're the right age. Another picture here, that's us holding a baby kestrel as it's getting banded. Now, there aren't many poems about kestrels. So I searched around and I found one which I suggested to Rob Paterson, and he did use it in the work that you will be hearing. And then the next question was, why marimba, from my point of view? And I remembered a conversation that I had had with Rob years ago when we performed his choral suite from A New Earth, in which he mentioned wanting to write a piece for choir and marimba. I happen to love the marimba, so game on. I will close by saying that the process has been a joy, except when we were a week away from performance in 2020, and were shut down by COVID. The only silver lining was that when we resumed rehearsals, a lot of us were already familiar with the piece. We rehearsed with piano, with many thanks to Pen Ying Fang, our incredible accompanist. But yesterday was the first time that we sang the piece with live marimba, played by the astonishing Makoto Nakura. Ladies and gents, it's going to knock your socks off. Thank you. We'll now have the opportunity to sit in on a conversation between Clara Longstreth and Robert Paterson. Thank you.
I am so happy to have a chance to talk with the composer Robert Paterson today. I discovered this composer through a CD of his music performed by Musica Sacra in 2015. That led to NAS programming his works in 2016 and 2017, and then to the commission that NAS is preparing for concerts December 10 and 12. Rob is having a big year. The Oratorio Society is giving a Carnegie Hall performance of a major work in May, and the Ember Choral Ensemble is giving a world premiere of another work also in May. In the summer, he spends 3 weeks running the mostly, not Mozart, but mostly modern festival in Saratoga Springs. So far, he has composed over 100 works. Please tell us a little about the festival that you formed and how you balance composition and administration.
All right, so hello everybody, I'm Rob. So I guess, just like anybody else, when you have a lot going on in your life, I just try to find, time each week or each day to do my work first. Usually I compose in the mornings, and then later in the day I do administrative work. But I usually reserve about a half hour in the morning just to check emails to make sure that, or text or whatever, to make sure there's nothing going horribly wrong, and I'm doing triage just to make sure everything's okay. But as far as administrating, yeah, I usually reserve it for a couple days a week, and then do intermittent work throughout the week as I need to. But I try to get, if I can, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a day of composing done, and maybe take a day off on the weekend a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much how I structure my day. I mean, but nothing's perfect. Things get in the way sometimes, or trips or rehearsals and other things. So I do the best I can, I guess, just to balance everything. And
right. And tell us about the festival a little bit.
Yeah, so the festival, I co-run a festival that I founded called the Mostly Modern Festival, which takes place each summer in Saratoga Springs, New York. And the reason it's called Mostly Modern is because we mostly program contemporary music by living composers. And then occasionally we have a foray into the past where we do a little music that's older, but older for us is like 20th century. So we usually don't even go before that and do anything before that. It's a 3-week festival. There's about 150 musicians from around the world, singers, instrumentalists, conductors, and there's an orchestra and chamber groups. And yeah, so we're only going to be having our 3rd season this summer because we had to take 2 off because of COVID. But we're really excited about having our 3rd season this coming summer.
And do you get audiences for this, what people might consider challenging contemporary repertoire?
Yes, and actually one of our goals is for people to show up kind of like with your concerts when you're performing music by living composers, and have people hopefully think, oh, this was enjoyable and not necessarily challenging,
Right.
So like you, we try to do that, and don't emphasize that it's like taking your medicine, or something like that. We don't treat it like that. It's more like we want you to just go and enjoy it and hopefully meet the composers because they're probably there, and have a good time. Yeah.
Great. If we could back up a little, can you tell us a little about your growing up in Buffalo, your parents, what influenced you to become a marimba player and then a composer?
Okay, so yeah, growing up in Buffalo, so my parents are both visual artists, and they both teach or were professors. My dad ran the sculpture department at SUNY Buffalo for about 35 years. So because of that, I used to go to he took me and my brother to a lot of classical concerts all while I was growing up. So I was exposed to new music and classical music early on. So I think it just became part of my DNA, and I really loved it. And I think as far as being a percussionist and playing marimba, I started playing percussion when I was in grade school. And because my parents were so loving and diligent about helping me and my brother, study music, I took percussion lessons. And of course, my percussion teacher was like, well, Brad, you could, play drum set. And I was playing drum set because my dream at that point was to be in a rock band. He says, why don't you try, bells and marimba and things like that too, because then it'll expand your horizons. And I did, but I was the only kid who could do it because all the others were just playing drums. So one thing led to another, and I just mostly started focusing on keyboard percussion and marimba. And that's how that happened. And so then I eventually played a lot all through college and after college. I developed a 6-mallet marimba, 6-mallet technique, so I could play with 3 mallets in each hand, which is something I showed Makoto, which we'll talk about later, how to do. He knows how to do it. But the piece that I wrote for New Amsterdam singers is only uses 4 mouths, so which is plenty. You don't need more than that.
Yes,
So.
right. When I went to your site, I saw that you had done videos, instruction videos on how to play with 6 mallets.
Mhm.
So that was pretty interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me just say a word about the marimba for people who don't know, and you tell me if I'm getting this right. It's part of the xylophone family of instruments. It originated in Africa, but with gourds rather than wooden slats.
Mhm.
Tell us about what is special about the 5-octave marimba.
Yeah, well, actually, and something that's interesting about the marimba, sonically, it's actually more related to a vibraphone than a xylophone, even though both instruments have wooden keys, the marimba and xylophone. The tuning is similar to vibes, which is what you hear a lot of jazz players play, like Gary Burton and Milt Jackson and people like that. And so, but as far as, yeah, I mean, sorry, you were asking something about, was it the tuning or what was it that you asked besides that, Clara?
Oh, the five
Oh, the 5
octaves.
octaves, yeah. So the 5, yeah, so a 5-octave instrument is pretty large, and that's considered in the percussion world kind of like a concert instrument that you play solos on and big pieces. And the instrument that is used in your piece that I wrote also uses 5 octaves. But generally, you know, a 4 1/3 octave instrument, which is a little smaller, is also really good, and you can play a lot of music on that. But the 5-octave instruments are really big, and they're hard to move around. So if you write for one, you want to do it carefully and make sure you really need those low notes because it goes lower. You know, you'll see it's a big instrument. You know.
Say something about the fact that the tremolo is used a lot with a marimba.
Right. That's a great question. So yeah, in the marimba, and unlike the vibes, which has a pedal and the bars are made out of metal, so they ring for a long time, like bells. On the marimba, to get a sustain, you have to use a tremolo. You have to tremolo or roll on the notes to create a sustain with the mallets. So the percussionist moves the mallets back and forth really fast between each hand on one note or a chord or a bunch of notes to create a sustained sound.
Right.
So that's one thing where, you know, it's not like a cello or a violin where you can just draw the bow across the string and get a long sound. You have to actually roll the mallets, right, to make the sustain. And the better players like Makoto will do it so beautifully that that you can barely tell that they're even rolls, or that he does it artfully so it sounds like it's part of the texture.
Right.
But it's, you know, it's an interesting kind of side effect that you have to deal with that instrument to create, you know, a sustained effect.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, you've written a good many works for chorus and many for the marimba. Is this the first time you have written a combination for the two?
This is, and I'm really excited about it because it's the instrument that I play or was playing up until recently, and I'm mostly composing right now. But and I love choir, and so and I've written a bunch, as you know, a bunch of choir pieces. So
Yes.
to combine the two is really exciting for me, and because I think the sonic combination of both is really beautiful. So I'm so happy about this. Yeah.
Can you put into words what you love about the sound of a marimba?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, aside from the fact that when you're playing it as a player, it feels good to play because the resonance is all around you because the instrument's so large. I love the sound of it because there's something very mellow and soothing. I mean, and not to say you can also play stuff that sounds very percussive and articulate, especially in the high end, or even on the low end if you're using nice hard mallets. But there's something very round and warm about the instrument. And you can play almost anything in a marimba and it sounds really beautiful. Kind of like, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but you know, choirs, even when things are going wrong, you're like, oh, it's still beautiful. I mean, like it's hard to really, well, actually, I shouldn't say that to you because you know it's not true. I mean, you can sound bad with choir, right? But I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, like, it's not like a brittle instrument that, you know, it's just going to sound good just by the nature of the sound, aside from what you play on it. So I love that about the instrument, you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to talk about I Go Among Trees,
Mhm.
the work that we're doing right now. You
Sure.
spent a good deal of time choosing the poems, and I think they are superb.
Thank you.
I wanted to just tell our listeners about what you have written into the score about the first poem you wrote. In this contemplative Zen-like poem, Wendell Berry expresses the meditative feelings of being alone among the trees and of being afraid and experiencing fear, all while using the metaphor of singing and songs to express a connection to both the outside world and feelings inside oneself. By the end of the poem, the narrator is able to let go and is at peace with these feelings. That's a very
Mhm.
beautiful paragraph you wrote.
Thank
Now,
you.
I want to ask whether you think that Wendell Berry was ever afraid in the woods, and whether he is writing out of his own experience. And then second question, have you
Mhm.
ever been afraid in the woods?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if you've ever spent time in the woods, and especially if it's a large woods or forest or whatever, and if you get lost or it gets dark out, or for example, if there's a thunderstorm, I mean, there are definitely moments when you can feel what he's getting at in this poem. Um, and I think I feel kinship with Wendell Berry's poetry in general, and particularly with this poem in this setting, because Wendell Berry, if you know anything about him as a poet, I think he has a farm and he does a lot of work outdoors, and so he writes a lot of poems about the outdoors and nature. So I really love his work, and I think that yeah, feeling meditative in the forest is really something I felt like. I mean, I have a house in Saratoga Springs now, where I feel completely blessed to have a few acres that have forest and trees, and so I literally was walking through the forest, you know, imagining this piece in my head as I was writing it. So that was a really great experience to have, because I could be in the trees, literally
Yeah.
thinking about the trees, and the poem was very kind of Escher-like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely, yeah, I feel a kinship with this poem for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of hiking as well.
I have, yeah, I really like to hike. I try to hike as many trails as I can when I have time off. That's as a family, it's one of our favorite things to do. And I certainly love doing it as much as I can. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to tell you what I admire in the first movement, particularly that the audience might or might not notice as it goes through. You do these harmonic shifts
Hmm.
that you use for the poem's ideas, especially, here's an example. As we sing, the day turns. So, of course, the chord that you use for the word turns is in another key.
Hmm.
It's very nifty, and I
Thanks.
hope
Thank
people
you.
don't miss it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask why you have the chorus sing wordless sections in certain passages on a hum or an ooh. This is a little bit unusual, and why do you do it?
I think sometimes it's to just take the focus away from needing to understand words being sung, and more
Huh.
about the feeling of the choir, and just
Uh-huh.
hearing the sound of the choir itself without having that quality. But also sometimes when I do that, you notice in the piece, I do it with the marimba, so the choir becomes more or less an instrument that's not a choir. It's more like just a sustain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that was part of the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hmm.
The third movement is a real tour de force. It is
Hmm.
fast, exciting, and it has a restless energy that expresses the flight of the kestrel,
Hmm.
which is a small member of the hawk family.
Hmm.
One technique that yields this energy that you use is a kind of syncopation that I call a push beat. Maybe you have another
Oh,
term for
cool.
it.
I've never heard that before. All right.
You
Yeah.
haven't? Well, there
No.
are countless push beats
Uh-huh.
for the
Okay.
chorus, in which a syllable comes before the beat rather than on the beat. It's something we had to spend some time learning.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it gives this kind of propulsive energy, which
Hmm.
I figured that's just why you did it.
Right.
Or is it something you do all the time?
No, I guess, look, if you heard some of my other pieces, even instrumental pieces, or perhaps other choir pieces, I'm sure there are techniques or stuff that I do that goes between different pieces, like, I guess, signature sounds or something. But as far as what I did with this piece and that movement, that was definitely very intentional in wanting to express this kind of, like you said, propulsion and flapping, like wings flapping, and how intense those birds look when they're flying around. And there's something very just playful about it, I think, to have a choir do something like what you're doing. So that was the reason for that. And I didn't mean to sound, it doesn't sound, I think, like any sounds a kestrel would actually make. It's more about a feeling, yeah.
People might not know that one of the signature moves that a kestrel makes is that it hovers, has very good eyesight,
Mhm.
sees what it's after on the ground, and goes
Right.
swooping really fast down for
Right.
it. So
So
you
yeah,
have, Yeah.
I was going to say, I watched a couple because I saw, you know, the amazing choir member of yours that commissioned this, you know, Barbara. So I visited her place and I saw some kestrels there and we talked about them and she sent me some pictures and things like that. And then I watched some YouTube videos and that's what's great about YouTube. You can find almost anything, right? So I saw some kestrels, videos of them, and they would flap their wings and then kind of soar and then flap their wings and soar. So that effect, chicka 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 cha, it's like flapping the wings and then soaring. And I think that's where I got that feeling from. It was watching them do that. So I didn't build in any death. There's no death scene like an opera where the kestrel swoops down and grabs like a snake.
Oh, that was kind of you.
I didn't really go there, you know, but
that would be something else.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting that one of our singers, a fairly new one that I don't know very well, sparked a big conversation on emails back and forth because he talked about a kestrel and showed pictures, and then there was a discussion about was this an American or a European kestrel that we were singing about, and I was amazed that so many people in the chorus were interested in birds.
Right.
Enough to respond and back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely, somebody brought up Messiaen, which was interesting because you know, that composer Olivier Messiaen wrote so many bird pieces. That was a huge part of his output.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're a composer and you write bird inspired music or music with bird sounds, if you know anything about music history, that's always kind of like this voice behind you, you know, that kind of you can't get away from, you know, because he did such a great job, you know, with all of his beautiful music. So anyway, yeah, so that was the story behind that effect in that movement, you know.
Here is another thing. You had a chance to do some rather nifty word painting because the word shadow comes up in the poem 3 times, and every time you get to put it in one voice, shadow, and immediately shadow in another voice, shadow, shadow happens 3 times. So I would not want an audience to miss that.
Yes, and I unabashedly love to word paint, and I know in certain circles that's considered, I don't know, not hip and cool or something, but I like to do it.
Not in our circles.
I like it, yeah. So I mean, I have
Great.
fun doing it. I think there's nothing wrong with being playful when you're composing music, and I'm all for it. So I like it, you know.
Maybe this would be a time to tell us about some music that we're going to intersperse on this interview.
Sure. Yeah, and speaking of shadows and forests, so Makoto Nakura, the marimbist that'll be performing in this premiere, I became friends with him many years ago and wrote actually 2 pieces for him. One of the pieces, I think the one that you're going to hear today in this interview, is called Forest Shadows, and it's for solo marimba, and that's actually kind of, I consider it like a sister piece or a companion piece to this piece. They both are related.
Oh.
And one of the reasons I wanted to write a piece about forests is because Makoto, over many years, I mean, it was not the only reason, but a side reason, was that he has a lot of pieces that he's performed about wood and forest, and he even has a CD called that. And I just felt like it would be nice to have a choir piece with marimba that was a little bit related to that solo, for fun, you know, and also because I really love nature stuff too, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so that's that piece. And I think we're going to play a little excerpt from the second movement of my duo for flute and marimba, right? And so that piece, that's an older piece, which I love. And that movement, again, it's for flute and marimba. And it's one of a whole bunch of pieces I've written for marimba and another instrument. And that's got, very playful. I think it's called Playfully Seductive. So it's got a very playful.
It's very seductive.
Yeah. You know, so
immediately winning.
Right.
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that piece is and it's actually ridiculously difficult to play, by the way. It's hard. You know, I put out a recording of it, and I practiced that a lot, you know.
Wow.
You know why I made myself struggle like that? I don't know. Like, I have control over it. I wrote the piece, right? But so that was idiotic of me. But you know, other people have played it and have been okay with it. So it's okay. I think sometimes hard pieces become easier over time. People figure them out, you know, ways to play.
This is very cool that we will get to hear you playing.
Yes, on that piece.
On the marimba. Yes.
Yes.
And you don't have to do it at this moment.
No, and I would have offered, I think videotaping marimba and doing all this all at once is sometimes a little difficult, but also I have to admit, full disclosure, I'm not practicing as much these days because I'm composing so much. at my desk over here. And so I don't feel like my technique is really solid, and I get a little insecure about it because I want to play really well. And when you hear Makoto, who's practicing, by the way, all the time, because that's what he
All
does
the
for a living, he'll sound amazing.
Yeah.
But if I had more time, yeah, I would play. And maybe someday I'll get, like, down the road, I'll get to play this piece we require myself, and I can do it. But I just need more time to practice, So
Well, there are not many composers, I think, who are composing on commission, and that's all they're doing, and they're making their living as a composer, but you are one of them. And that's a great tribute. to the
thank
people who
you.
love your
I
music.
feel very, very grateful for all the musicians that have supported me and commissioned me. Yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
And we're grateful to Barbara Zucker-Pinchoff, who
Yes.
interested enough well, you'll hear more in another, maybe she will talk.
I can't wait. Yeah, I think she's
about
going to
the
talk later, right?
event.
Yeah.
She'll talk about this, how it came to be.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, she's amazing. I'm so grateful to her for helping
Yes.
commission this piece. So thank you, Barbara. Yeah, really
Yes.
great.
And are there some things that I did not ask you that you'd like to talk about?
I think, well, I want to talk about your choir for a minute, because
Okay.
everybody knows you, I think, who's listening to this, but I know I don't want to make you blush or anything, but the fact that you've been doing this for 50 years and that you've done so
More.
much new music.
More.
More,
50.
yeah, more than 50 now. Now more than 50, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then you've done so many wonderful pieces by living composers. I think is a real testament to just what an amazing conductor you are, and supporter of living composers. It's really rare to find any choral directors that do what you do, ever, anywhere in the world. So
Wow.
I'm so grateful, not only for my piece, but for what you've done for other composers. It's just a joy to see how much new music you do. It's incredible, and really good programming too. You don't just do it, you think a lot about your programming. I really appreciate
I
it.
do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on to the next. And it was wonderful to have you at rehearsal, and you got a few interesting questions thrown to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the singers are very happy to be doing the piece too.
Great. Well, your singers sound amazing, and the solos
Yeah.
sound great too. I think it all sounds so
Yes,
good. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, Clara. Bye.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So that was really strange to watch myself talk. I like want to second guess myself, and I wish I would have said different things at certain points, but pretty happy with it. It's okay. And thank you, Clara. So I figured it might be a good idea to show a few of those excerpts that we were discussing. And maybe first we could start out with, if Andy can help us, excerpt of me showing Makoto how to hold 6 mallets. So maybe we can check that out. It's only about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Just a little bit of it.
So a percussionist holds 4 mallets, that's what it looks like. So what I do, at least with what I'm going to do, is I'm going to hold 6 when I play, 3 in each hand. So, okay, so take 2 mallets in one of your hands, maybe your right hand. And what I'm using is what's called the Burton grip, based on a vibraphonist named Gary Burton. So it's flipped over.
This one,
Yeah,
yes.
so like that.
Yep.
And then you take the 3rd mallet and put it on top, like that. I know. Uh-oh.
Oh, that's very unusual. Okay. Okay, like that?
Hopefully not too unusual. So then you close your fingers and put your index finger there. So you put your ring finger on the outer mallet. So this mallet there, like that.
Like that?
That's it,
Wow.
pretty much. Not too bad, right? Wait, let's turn over again. Let's see if you got it almost. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it. Look at that. In like 30 seconds, you did it. See? Not too bad. I feel like I'm advertising one of those food gizmos, right? And so when you get further along with this, you can actually, do things like play a little independently, like that, or you can, play chords using obviously the flats and sharps, things like that. And there you go. That's how you hold 6 mallets.
All right, so that was a little bit of that. It's clearly more difficult than I was alluding to. It does take a while to figure that out. So then I wanted to play a little excerpt, again, about 1.5 minutes of me actually playing when I was actually practicing, so you could see what I look like when I play. And this is a little bit of a piece called Braids, which is for violin and marimba. and it's me and my wife Victoria playing. We used to have a duo together until we realized that we don't work well as a duo together because we're talking about real life too much. So we had to fire each other. So that's what happened with that. But here we are playing a little excerpt of Braids for violin and marimba. All right, so that was that. And I figured next we could hear just a few seconds, like about 30 seconds of another piece that I wrote. I did a series of pieces, and I'm leading somewhere. I'm going to lead to Makoto in just a minute here, talk more about him and some stuff that he was up to. A piece for flute and marimba that Clara really likes, which is flattered, and thank you, called Duo for Flute and Marimba. And this is a little snippet of the second movement called Playfully Seductive. So let's hear a little bit of that. About 30 seconds. It's just audio. All right, so that was that. It's nice to hear a piece that you wrote, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe, I can't remember, but I still love the piece. I haven't fallen out of love with it, so that's a nice feeling. Sounds kind of jazzy, that's cool. All right, so and then maybe next, I wanted to play just a little bit of this piece that Clara mentioned we were talking about called Forest Shadows. And what this is, it was for solo marimba. And again, I wrote this for Makoto while we first got to know each other. And so it's just for marimba alone. So let's hear a little bit of that. All right. Yeah. So, okay. So just one more little excerpt, and then I see some really great questions. we'll have fun talking about. I just want to play one more thing, and this is a video about 1 minute and 10 seconds. And this is Makoto playing with another marimba player, a duo that I wrote for the two of us called Mandala, which was actually inspired by a mandala image or tapestry that we saw at the Rubin Museum in New York together. We took a little walk there one day, just meeting up for coffee or whatever. And so the whole piece is cyclical and can be connected beginning to end and is inspired by this mandala image. Yeah, let's watch these two marimbas, Makoto and the other marimba player play that for a minute. All right, great. Okay, so I see there's a whole bunch of questions. So I'm not sure, maybe I can answer some and then, or somebody can moderate, or how you want to do this. So let's see.
So,
Yeah.
Robert, if it's okay with you, I'd like to just call on the people who posted their questions.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Great.
I'll do that in order of how they of who posted first.
Okay.
So Andy, people who need to can unmute, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
And I think
okay,
Barbara
good.
would go first. So
Yeah. Okay. So Barbara will go first, and then I'll call on the others.
All right. I have a question, which is, how do you start? So you're going to compose a new piece. A choir says, write a piece for us. Maybe it's something with lyrics. Maybe it's something without. How do
Right.
you start?
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's a really good question, Barbara. Thanks. I think it depends on the piece. So for a piece that's vocal piece, like a piece for the choir, I think that started out, I can't really begin, or at least this is the way I do it. I don't really begin until I have the text. So there was this whole process of finding the poems, your poem, the kestrel, and then the other two, which, as you know, you, me, and Clara, we went through this for months. I mean, I did all this research and we found some poems, and then you told me about the kestrel, and then Clara looked at them, and Clara would be like, yeah, I don't like that one either. And I'm like, oh, okay, back to the drawing board. So we spent a little while finding some poems that we all kind of agreed on. But once I have the poems, then I'll start sketching out ideas, usually in writing, just by text, like on a computer or a piece of paper or something. And by the way, I do write by hand first. I sketch everything by hand, kind of old school, which I know is really old fashioned now with computers, but then I put everything in the computer later and do computer notation. But I'll write stuff up in words, then I'll sketch out a few melodic ideas or harmonic ideas. Then I might sketch out a formal idea, especially based on the poem, and decide, like when Clara was mentioning the shadow idea, I might write a little of that or a little motivic thing just to remind myself I'm going to do that. And so that's how, the approach isn't much different for an instrumental piece. It's just that I wouldn't necessarily have words guiding the piece in that way. But I also start big and then go small. So I start with a title, or I start with a concept of something like, I want this to be fast, or I want it to be for these instruments, or I want the violins to have a really hard part, or I want to have solos like I did in the one movement there in your piece. And I'll figure those things out first, just kind of as goals or things I want to do. And then I'll figure out a roadmap and say, okay, I want the energy to go up here, or I want it to come down here, or, so it's like a multi-step process, and there's no single way of doing it. It all depends sometimes. I mean, but that's basically how I do it. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. So, yep. Yes. So can't hear you, Paul.
You will, you can hear me now.
Good,
Okay, so
good.
Oren has a question. Oren, why don't you go?
Unmute.
Oren, unmute.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. Sorry. So actually, it's one member of our group here. Sylvia, come and ask your question.
It was just,
Well, you guys have a party. I wish I was at your place. Look, you got like a bunch of people. Oh, it's great.
So-
Okay.
So Lucas Foss was conducting the symphony, I think, in Buffalo. Did you ever go see anything?
So,
he did or
that's a
composed?
good question. My parents, I know when they first moved to Buffalo back in the 60s, I think they went to a bunch of his concerts. I think I might have been too young to have attended any of his stuff, but there's a chance I saw some of his very last concerts because he was there in the early 70s or late
Right.
60s, maybe. But if I did go to his concert, I wouldn't have remembered anything. I mean, I went to performances by John Cage and Morton Feldman and all these interesting composers. I don't remember any of it, I mean, which is so annoying. I mean, if I could go back in time and remember that, I'd be so grateful. But yeah, I used to go to the Buffalo Philharmonic's performances growing up, and I studied with a bunch of those players. I studied percussion with Lynn Harbold, who played percussion. And in fact, Jesse Kriegel, this is weird, I'm just going to mention it because it's strange. Jesse Kriegel, the timpanist, I went to school with his daughter, Rachel, in that orchestra, and then he passed away. So like a year ago, I went to their house where Jesse lived in Buffalo, and Rachel gave me and sold me a couple things, but gave me a few of his instruments, said, do you want these timpani? Do you want this set of tubular chimes? So I have tubular chimes in the basement of my house, and timpani too, that she gave me that were Jesse's, which is really weird. So that's a strange thing. I don't know, I've got all these great memories of Buffalo and percussion and Lucas Foss and like knowing about him and composers. It was a great town to grow up in that way, a lot of great musical influences, I think.
Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Wonderful. Next, we'll hear from Elisa, please.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
So my question to you is, when you write for vocals,
Mhm.
do you think about the vocal line as a melody first, or do you come up with a chord structure first and then put that melody into the chord structure? How do you work
That's a
with a
great
vocal
question.
line
Thank
and
you.
instruments? Sure.
Thank you. I think it depends. Some situations are different. Like I could use specific moments, I guess, in the piece that you guys are doing. Let's see, like, I think there's the beginning of the second movement where it's kind of melodic and you guys are singing a syllable, right? So there I probably came up with the melodic line first and then harmonized it a little bit because I knew I wasn't basing it on exact words. But then, so there's a lot of times I think I would definitely say I might come up with a melodic pattern first, but knowing what harmonic world I'm going to be in. So for example, a lot of the piece you're singing is tonal of all three movements, but there's moments that are octatonic or that are intervallic, where there's, and not too many of those, but they occur here and there, where the writing is a little bit more obtuse. And so then I'll think, okay, I want to be in that sound world because I want that kind of tension or energy. And then I'll build the voice around that. But around that, not think so much about creating a memorable melodic line, but creating a feeling. But if I want a memorable melodic line or something that's a little more of like a hook, I'll think of the melodic line first, then harmonize it, That's pretty much how I approach that kind of music. Some, choral pieces sometimes, yeah, depending on what it is. Mhm.
Ellen Stark.
Yeah, my question, when you were speaking with Clara, you said something, I can't remember the exact phrasing now.
Mhm.
I need to run the tape about how well the marimba and the human voice,
Mhm.
you thought they worked well together.
Mhm.
And I just wondered if you could expand on that a little bit, on what you think it is about the human voice or the sound of a choir and the marimba that make them a good pair.
Oh, you guys have such great questions. I wish we were all in a class together. That'd be fun. So I thank you for that. I think the marimba, if you analyze the marimba and it's the sonics of it, like the partials and the overtones and how the sound of the bar, the bars they're called, we call them that, or instead of keys on the marimba. My theory is, and I don't know if this is true, but I mean, I'm just kind of guessing just based on feeling a little bit, that there's something similar to the human voice in the sense that I bet, even though the human voice is a very complex instrument, much more so I think than the marimba in the timbral sense, that there's something that blends easily with the way the marimba is tuned, because there's an octave, and I think another octave, and then a fifth, and then a third, and it's a very, it's not like the oboe or some other types of instruments that are more gritty. There's a purity to the sound, so it's easy to blend it with the voice, I think. And the voice, is complex as your sound as a choir, I think it fits in there nicely. But that's just my theory. I just think I'm going by the feeling of, I mean, marimba is a cool instrument. It kind of blends with almost anything. I mean, I can't remember ever writing with the marimba for something. I even wrote a piece for marimba and tuba once, and that sounded pretty cool. You know, that worked. I was like, wow, that works. That's cool. You know, I'm trying to think, maybe marimba and piccolo, maybe that one worked. Marimba and triangle, I don't know, maybe not, you know. But I guess, I don't know, I wouldn't do that. You have to pay me a lot of money to do that. It was like, no, I'm not doing that. So, but anyway, that's my theory. I don't know if it's true, but just going on feel, maybe, yeah. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Enid, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, hi, Robert.
Hello.
Most
How are you?
interesting. Yeah, I'm a friend of Jennifer Trahan, who's in the choir. We're colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever written anything for the theremin? Because
Oh,
talking
man.
about the human voice and all.
Funny you mentioned that. I haven't, but there's an opera I'm going to be working on called The Moon Moth, based on an old sci-fi story by a writer named Jack Vance. And I just got the rights for it. I know I'm going to be doing the opera in the next couple of years. And it's supposed to be based on in an alien culture. And there's a chance that we may use a theremin. But no, and that's funny that you mentioned that. Do you play the theremin?
Well, I mentioned it because my daughter,
who
lives in Austin, Texas, plays the theremin.
Oh, really? So you're trying to get her a gig? Is that it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's always
Maybe.
nice. Listen, mothers do whatever they have to.
Absolutely.
No, but seriously,
Right.
she has done something with somebody that plays. Never remember if it's Cymbalon or Chimbalon, but however it's
Symbol,
pronounced.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
and yeah, I
Cool.
mean, this is her bag.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked, and
It's a great instrument. Yeah. So I mean, it's a really interesting sound. So
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
it's just luck of the draw. Like people ask you
Mhm.
to write certain pieces, so if they mention it, it comes up.
Mhm.
Great.
Well, because so much of it can sound like the human voice,
Yes, absolutely.
depending of how it's played, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, well, let's hope, and maybe I'll meet your daughter, and
Well, we'll worry. This is not the time and the place, but anyhow.
we'll tackle that later. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you for answering the
Yep.
question.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to insert a question here, and I just had to say that when I think of the theremin, I think we all think of science fiction, so that sounds really great.
Right. Yeah. It's a little on the nose, right? You know.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Clara Rockmore, you may recall, was his disciple, more or less, and played Bach on the theremin, and it was absolutely magnificent. Originally, it was used for a classic, as I understand it, used classically, although my daughter doesn't play it like that. But that's yeah, no. So it's not, and then it became that mysterious sound for those kinds of movies and things. So.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I have several questions, and I'll just ask one. I just have to take just have to choose among several I'm really curious about. And Robert, your music is very expressive. It evokes emotions and images. And you may recall, or not, once I had a conversation with you that a movement of the piece that we did of yours, the Earth, A New Earth. The Suite for New Earth, reminded me, or sounded to me like it would fit perfectly with the famous science fiction movie, silent movie, Metropolis. And you said, oh yes. And so my question to you, Robert, is have you considered writing scores for film? And if you did, what would be the special issues you have to deal with as a composer?
Oh man, what a great question. Thank you. I've definitely considered it. I mean, any composer would be out of their mind, a living composer, to not consider, because film composers, well, first of all, it can be a lot of fun, obviously, if it's the right situation, although it could also be deadly not fun if it's the wrong situation. But I also think I have to say it, I mean, financially in that world, if you're the right composer in the right situation, you can do really well. So composers think of it from that standpoint, from a practical standpoint. But the other side of it is that very few composers make it to that level, like the James Horner, Danny Elfman, John Williams, all those guys, you know, the really, really good and the ones that are more well-known film composers. So although I've considered it, I think you have to be in a situation like there's been a few composers like John Corigliano from Juilliard and a few others who've done, he did the Red Violin, for example, in Altered States. There have been some that have crossed over and done okay and done a few films, or Copland, obviously back in the day, and so on. But it's a weird world to straddle, and you don't always get what you want. And also, I think to your question, the biggest hurdle is film composers often don't get enough time, and so you can almost never orchestrate your own music. Like John Williams, I know one of his orchestrators. I'm good friends with him. His name's Bill Ross. John doesn't have time. He's working on too many films. He can't do all the work himself. So you lose that sense of control and finesse. You can't finesse everything anymore, and you have to be beholden to a team, which is not bad. I love working with people. Like opera is the perfect example. And even this situation with choir, but it gets tougher to really know what you're getting into and know how things are going to turn out if you can't keep the reins on it a little bit. So that's the hardest part. The time and how there's so little time to do it. They'll spend years on a film and give the composer like 2 or 3 weeks for an entire soundtrack, for like an hour and a half of music or an hour of music, whatever. That's insane, you know? So probably that's why I love writing for choir and doing this. This is a lot more fun because there's a more intimate experience, you know? But I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, that's how I feel about that. I would do it though, yeah, if the right situation came along, you know.
It certainly does, and especially since you talked about the ins and outs of it. Well, maybe at some point a director will choose one of your pieces to just feature in one of their movies. So
yeah, that would be.
I hope that happens.
Yeah, that would be. Thank you. I'd be thrilled. You know.
Great. So we're going to hear from Rob Petersak now.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, Rob.
Hi.
We're here with a group of 10 New Amsterdam Singer supporters.
Oh man, another party I'm missing. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, it's a first party for many of us, but
Oh, that's great.
we really enjoyed the program. I must say that. And one question that came up when we had the 2 marimbas playing together, they seem to have very different sounds. Are there different marimbas, or is it just a question of how they play?
There are different marimbas, definitely. Makoto actually plays a marimba called a Musser marimba, that make of marimba, which ironically, or in a happy coincidence, the marimba he's playing in your concert is the one that he actually plays and endorses, which is great because that's not always the case. He often plays marimbas by Sato or Demoro or other makers. I play one by a maker called Demoro, so it's a different instrument. They do sound different. Like the one he plays is actually, this sounds funny, but a very woody sounding marimba, whereas the one I play is maybe a bit warmer. It's like the difference between like a Steinway and a Bosendorfer or a Beckstein. You know, different pianos have slightly different sounds, and so do different marimbas. And players can play differently, although in that sense with those 2 players, I think it also could have something to do with the mallets, because Makoto might have been using slightly harder mallets than the other guy. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I don't think their instruments, they look, I can't remember, they look like they were both Musser instruments. But I'd have to see it again, yeah. So that's interesting that you thought they were different, yeah.
Do you write differently for different marimbas?
No, actually, I would never do that because that's like, you can't determine what instrument somebody's gonna play. I know that certain marimbas do things differently. Like some marimbas have a different kind of sound, you know, so you know that you can hear it if you know I can actually hear marimbas without seeing them and probably guess what kind it is. I'm usually pretty close, not always, but sometimes. But if I did that, I would go crazy because I don't know. Some other marimbas might say, well, you wrote it for that person playing the Demoro, but I play a kori from Japan or something, some other instrument, you know. I'm like, I can't determine that. And I wouldn't tell marimbas you must play. I mean, you see how big that instrument is, right? It's hard enough to get one marimba around, let alone try to find different marimbas all over the city or the country that are that brand, you know, or that type. So
then the music just sounds different.
Yeah, it'll sound a little, that's the joy of it though. Your choir sounds different than any other choir. So you sound like you, and Makoto sounds like Makoto. He's going to play that piece like he plays it. I love that. I love when players and singers and conductors make pieces their own, so that this will always, you guys will own it in your own way, and he owns it in his own way too. And then another marimbist or choir will do it, and that's great, and they'll have their sound, you know. So that's, to me, that's awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so our next question is from Elspeth.
Hello.
I'm unmuting there. Hello. Hi there. Hello. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
The question is a little similar to one already asked, but it's about melody, really. I was just curious if melody is informed by the text for you almost always, or if sometimes there's just melody that emerges and then text connects to it, or is it both of those? I'm just interested in that.
It's just both. It's like a soup. I don't know how else to say it.
Melodies. Okay. Right.
There's nothing black and white about it, which is half the joy of doing it. Oh, it's also scary. I think the text, to me, if I'm writing music that's with text, like a choral piece, the text definitely informs the melody to me. And I'll often make the melody to go around what the text is. Like, you know, for instance, the text feels like it needs to rise, I'll make the melody rise. It feels like it needs to get bright, I'll kind of brighten up the way the sound is of the melody, or I'll make it go faster or something.
Right.
But sometimes it happens where sometimes you come up with a melody, and you're like, well, I haven't fit it to the text yet, but somehow I'll make this work. Like the little texture you guys do in the end piece, I mean, some of that has nothing to do with the words per se, but it's more of like a textural feeling, you know, like just a thing to have fun with, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, but again, instrumental music's almost very different than that, because sometimes there are moments when you just come up with stuff that just sounds good for the sake of the sound, or you love how it sounds on a cello, so you just do it that way. Yeah, so it's a little different.
Because there's such beautiful melodies in this piece, I think.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
You guys sing it so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, we might have one or two more questions, but first, perhaps if you think that we should close now, I just want to make sure I give time for Clara to give some closing remarks. Do you have time for one or two more questions?
Sure. I'm
before
okay.
that?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, no problem.
All right. So since I'm the MC, you know, it's a bully pulpit, so I'll ask one more. And this is sort of a fun question, Robert. I understand you're an accomplished cook, and as are some of the people in this audience, having worked for benefits, NAS benefits, preparing food. Would you like to comment on what about composing, as you said once, is like cooking?
Wow, what an awesome question. Thank you. I do love to cook. It's kind of one of my hobbies and passions when I get to do it outside of creating music. It's similar, you know, it's funny. I often say this to people. I mention a lot of food analogies, and people like roll their eyes at me all the time. It's like, another one, Rob, really? So because I think recipes in a way are similar to pieces, like musical pieces, and that you're giving a set of directions, but there can be variation. And you can follow it exactly, or you can veer off the path a little bit, or veer off the path entirely, which might not be what the original chef envisioned or whatever. I mean, this is a very simplistic analogy, right? Because recipes are usually much simpler than like a piece of music, which has hundreds of thousands of markings all over the page or whatever, depending on the piece. So, but it's, in a way, it's fun to think about, because just like you think of spice or salt or any kind of thing, you know, way you're putting together a recipe in food, I think in music it's almost similar in the sense, you know, I do think of that a little bit. Sometimes I taste things when I compose. It's weird. I'll taste something salty if I'm writing something. It's like a weird, it's not like a physical in your mouth, it's more like a brain. It's weird. It's almost like synesthesia, where I almost feel the saltiness of something or the sweetness, and I can almost taste it, you know, which sounds totally cheesy, and I'm sorry, but that's how I think of it. So something might sound sweet to me because of the smooth, like some of the marimba stuff with the choir. And if I want to make it sound peppery, I'll make it a little harsher, you know? And I love thinking like that. So I love thinking of food and music and how they relate. Interestingly, at our festival, we're doing I just want to mention this because it's right up this alley of this question. We're doing a 5-week test run of my festival this spring in April in the Netherlands, because we might branch out and start doing pilot festivals around the world. And at that festival, they want to do food concerts where they pair food with the music, and new music too. So new pieces that are written, see what they sound like, pair dishes and chefs from all over the city. And this is taking place in Zeeland in the Netherlands. So they're going to pair all this together. I don't know how they're going to do it. It sounds awesome. I can't wait to see what they do, but it seems fun, right? You know, what could be worse? Great food and hopefully great music, hopefully. So we'll see, you know.
Thanks. Thanks for that great answer. So I think we're going to move to wrapping this up. And Clara, I'm sure you have a few concluding remarks that you'd like to make to Robert. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, am I unmuted? I think I am. I wanted to say that I really enjoyed the piece called Mandala that I heard
Oh,
today.
thank you.
Really, really enjoyed that.
Mhm.
The fun
Thank you.
thing, I think we all experience is that the better you know a piece and the more times you revisit it and re-study it over and over, the more new things you see and hear that you didn't see before. And if it's a good piece, that's like among trees.
Mhm. Thank
It's a great process. So you get deeper and deeper into it and find more things that you didn't initially see. And that's really exciting. And I think the singers are undoubtedly finding that as we get very close to a concert. And you've also been just exceptionally nice to work with and so
Thank you.
supportive of the
Appreciate that.
chorus.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay, I think this has gone on a long time and I bet people will need to go make dinner.
Good food, right? Yeah. Let's all make
Yeah.
some good dishes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Thanks,
Good
Clara.
night.
Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Robert, I hope you can write us another one.
I hope so. We'll see. We'll talk later.
Thank you. Looking
All right.
forward to hearing this.
Okay. See you guys later. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.